So yeah, welcome everyone to the seminar. And today we have Yijian Zeng presenting, who is an associate professor in soil plant digital twin at the University of Twente. He is currently the co-chair of International Soil Modelling Consortium and serves as GWEX Glass panel member and co-leads the ISMC GWEX Soil WAT initiative. His research focusing on monitoring and forecasting ecosystem drought responses via a digital twin framework that seamlessly integrates process-based models, Earth system observation data, data assimilation, and physics-informed machine learning. And today, Yijian will be presenting on accelerating ecosystem understanding, a soil plant digital twin with STEMMUS-SCOPE. So thank you very much for agreeing to present today, Yijian, and I'll hand over to you to kick off.
Thank you, Ivan, Suhail. I will start to share my screen then. Let me see. Okay. Wait, I need to re-share. Click. Okay, here.
Great. I think that's coming now.
It's coming up.
Yes, we've got that through now.
Let me put it into full screen. Yeah, is it
Perfect.
okay?
Yeah, I think that's in
Okay,
the right
thank
mode and looks great. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks a lot again, Ivan, for your warm introduction, and thanks a lot for both you and Suhail for inviting us to join this webinar. So together with my colleagues, I also say hi to everyone online. Together with my colleague, Professor Bob Su, we are currently building this so-called soil plant digital twin, well, based on let's say STEMMUS-SCOPE as the core module, but then there's also other parts. I will come back to this briefly. And with the contributions from our postdoc and PhDs, just briefly mention their names here. So in phase one, he really started coupling the soil model and the vegetation model STEMMUS-SCOPE back 2020. And then Zheng Jing is still with us doing PhD, incorporating the plant hydraulics, but also a bunch of coordinated photosynthetic process into the STEMMUS-SCOPE. Dangyang Yu was with us on plant growth model and also canopy structure. And now he's a postdoc in Cornell University. And Anting Tang is doing carbon nutrient cycles in the STEMMUS-SCOPE. And we also have Chen Han, Prajawal, now doing emulator. One is for global scale, the other is on high resolution for the Netherlands, for example, or can be any region. And we also coupled our model with groundwater modeling. So this is thanks to Liang Yu and Mustafa. And for doing all these processes, we also need high performance computing. And in the previous project, the Sala Alidos helped a lot. And now we also has help from Bas Rachels, our colleagues in ITC. So before I start, I would like to briefly, let's say, introduce what does it mean, let's say, soil plant digital twin in our concept. So we really trying to make it as kind of digital twin can make the, for example, forest or food forest or agriculture system a more practical and also scalable nature-based solution. And we start, for example, with the question farmers has, for example, on the ground, things like what should we plant and how much water do we actually have, or how is stress showing up, and also how is the system, how resilient is the system going to be under drought and climate change. So it's not only about, let's say, modeling, but really about tuning or let's say turning the measurements, remote sensing, but also modeling into something that can support the decision. So this is a basic soil plant digital twin concept as we refer to it. And it basically combined field observation. I think you can see my mouse, maybe, yes. So combined the field observation, Earth, but also the Earth observation together with a process-based model. And for monitoring and predicting basically the soil plant system health and it is functioning. And then all this will be linked to the actual, for example, food forest system. and where the hope for benefits are including, for example, better water holding capacity, carbon sequestration, carbon or nutrient cycling, but also stronger resilience overall. So in our, let's say, soil plant digital twin, we really put this photosynthesis and the water potential as kind of a central perspective for coupling water energy and the carbon cycles. So we can start it from this diagram. For example, we all aware of the processes. The water will uptake by the root to the stem and then transport to leaf, join the dark reaction and also light reaction of the photosynthetic processes. And during the light reaction phase, there will be emission of solar-induced fluorescence, and this will be sensed by the satellite sensors like OCO2, OCO3, SLOPOMI, but also the FLEX mission, which is coming up, hopefully will be launched this year. And all this satellite signal of SIF will be assimilated by the soil plant system for monitoring and predicting the ecosystem health and its functioning. So as such, it realized so-called soil plant digital twin cycle in our sense. And then this is basically linking the satellite observable to not only the above ground process, but because our model also consider the below ground processes, for example, for which I will introduce quickly in next slide. So this is the STEMMUS-SCOPE model. We basically have two parts, as mentioned briefly. So for the vegetation part, we have photosynthesis and energy balance, radiative transfer processes. So basically, you can simulate forwardly the fluorescence reflectance, and therefore enabling the data assimilation of all these satellite measurements. At the same time, for the soil part, we have, let's say, STEMMUS model, which is a soil model simulating soil water and heat flow together with the vapor flow and air flow. And the reason for incorporating the vapor flow in our model is because for every and the semi-arid site, the liquid flow is not dominating, but really the vapor flow is dominating in the soil. At the same time, we also consider the dynamic root growth, and which will also corresponding to the root water uptake, and all this information, let's say soil states, root growth, root water uptake will lead to the update of the soil states in terms of soil water content, soil moisture, and all this information will be used to construct the so-called soil plant hydraulic resistance scheme, as I briefly listed here. So with that, in the coming slides, I will try to focus on the following topics. So first of all, it's really in terms of applying our modeling system to understand ecosystem functioning for agriculture and the nature ecosystem under, for example, drought conditions, and then slowly dive into the relationship between SIF and the GBP, and also the role of leaf water potential. And then after that, some challenging in terms of understanding SIF with the soil plant hydraulics. And based on this understanding, how can we utilize satellite SIF to inversely estimate, for example, water energy carbon fluxes? And then I also will briefly highlight the importance of considering the dynamic vegetation growth and the canopy structure. And because this is a machine learning for the model webinar, so we also briefly showed we use the emulator to accelerate our, let's say, a global simulation or produce of the flux hourly data set. So first of all, this is an example for using our model for understanding water use efficiency in arid site. So here we use the US VAR, let's say it's kind of an arid grassland site. So we do two experiments. So one is the top panel, we use vegetation only model. The vegetation only model is basically the original SCOPE model, because in SCOPE, the soil moisture is fixed as a background. So it's not reflecting the soil water stress. And then we use it to simulate GBP and the ET. As we can see here at the beginning, it it is in a reasonable agreement with the measurements. But starting from day 110, when the soil water stress kick in, then you can see there's a dramatic overestimation of ET and also GPP. And this is because the soil moisture content is fixed, so therefore you don't see the soil water stress. And in our model, when you couple the STEMMUS and the SCOPE model, because we consider the dynamic root growth and also the root zone soil moisture, let's say, is used as kind of water stress factor, which can show the impact of water stress. And therefore you can see much better, or let's say the physiologically realistic let's say reproduce the GPP and the ET. Okay, and then we run this model for 170 sites. We're also part of the Parameter 2 project. And for running, this is basically the general performance of the model performance in terms of simulating net radiation, latent heat, sensible heat, ground heat, GPP, NEE, soil moisture, and the soil temperature. So let's say other than the ground heat flux, the model reproduce the observation variables in quite reasonably well. Although, let's say the sensible heat flux and NEE remains more variable across sites, but then for the relatively poor performance of ground heat flux deserves some, let's say, cautions. So it should be interpreted with the cautions, because the direct comparison really depends on whether the FluxNet data represent the heat flux plate at the depth or the storage corrected surface flux, which is basically our model output. So if the in situ observation is not storage corrected to the surface, then such kind of deviation could be expected. Another thing to mention is that when we are running 170 sites, according to the Parameter 2 protocol, we don't do any tuning, just using the global driver, like or global model input data, like the MODIS, LAI, ELO5 metal data, but also the soil, hydro, and the thermal parameters. We also group our model performance into different soil wetness degree. For example, the wet and the moderate wet, dry, and the severe dry. And this is for latent heat flux, this is for GPP. And then we basically can see, okay, for severe, let's say dry conditions, the model still have room to improve. And we suspect that this is linked to, for example, water stress factor, and the hydraulic resistance gain considered in STEMMUS-SCOPE. So in the next topic, then I will dive into these two perspectives, but then at the same time also illustrate a little bit, let's say, our model capacity in terms of understanding the relationship between SIF and the GPP and the law of leaf water potential. So I will come back to these two quickly. So just a brief whole picture how the water flow within the soil plant system in our model is considered. So basically, the water transport from the soil to the leaf is determined by the water potential gradient between the soil and the leaf. So this is the soil water potential, this is leaf water potential. But at the same time, we also consider the systems in the soil, in the root, and also in the xylem. And this is transpiration. And according to this diagram, we know all this soil plant hydraulic connection is also coordinated with a sieve, as I mentioned before. So therefore, I also briefly so I combined these two. So one is about the sieve GPP relationship. Another is about how this relationship is coordinated with the soil plant hydraulic connection. So this left figure is a figure we frequently see. Let's say it is comparison between the satellite sieve and the tower GPP, and this is an apparent linear relationship. However, such kind of a linear relationship is conditioned with a certain, for example, if it is water stressed or not. Because in our model for STEMMUS-SCOPE, we can simulate such a kind of a linear relationship as well. But then this linear relationship between GPP and the sieve is only valid under the condition there's no water stress. So if there's a water stress, then you see they are highly nonlinear. Yeah. On the other hand, if you put sieve, so solar-induced fluorescence with leaf water potential together, so even under the water stressed condition, you can see a kind of also apparent linear relationship. So then the next question is really to figure out, okay, why there is a linear relationship under, for example, water stress between sieve and the leaf water potential. And this can be explained by our model, let's say process considered in our model. And first, let's look at this figure. So the purple lines are leaf water potential. The black lines are water stress factor. So water stress factor equals to 1 means there's no water stress. And if it is approaching 0 means it's getting very, very dry. And then as we can see here, when the water stress factor, or let's say when the soil is getting stressed, you can see that the leaf water potential is also going down with it. And then when the soil is not stressed, or let's say the stress is relieved, you can see that there's also recover of the leaf water potential. So this means the water stress factor is actually regulating the leaf water potential. And this is because in our model, we use the water stress factor, which is formulated as kind of a function of root zone moisture content. And then any change in the root zone moisture content will induce or regulate the water potential change in leaf. So therefore, you see such kind of regulation of water stress factor on leaf water potential. At the same time, in our model, we also impose water stress factor to Vcmax. And then we know, I mean, when you're regulating Vcmax, this is in coordination with also it is upstream in terms of the photosynthetic processes, and this will also regulating the sieve emission. So therefore, the water stress factor is also, I mean, through this imposed relationship, also regulating the sieve. So therefore, you see this kind of apparent linear relationship between sieve and the leaf water potential, because water stress factor is co-regulating leaf water potential and sieve. So a brief session summary here. So in the previous slides, I trying to say, okay, the sieve GPP is not necessarily linear, although most of the time we will treat it this way, but it depends on the time scales. It depends on the process we are talking about. So it should be context specific. But in all cases, we know in our study we find sieve GPP is not necessarily linear, particularly under water stressed condition. On the other hand, because of water stress factor formulation in our model, and also this is physiologically connected to photosynthetic processes, but also physiologically connected to leaf water potential change. Therefore, you can say, okay, during the water stressed condition, sieve could be an indicator of leaf water potential, and then also can be used as kind of a water stress indicator in a sense. So with the above, basically, it's trying to say, okay, interpretation of sieve really requires, let's say, the full spectrum understanding of soil-water plant energy interactions, and also including its coordination with the soil plant hydraulics. So next, I will, because of the importance of the soil plant hydraulics, so next I will also dive into understanding sieve and its relationship with the soil plant hydraulics in more details. Because in the previous slides, currently the soil plant hydraulics are realized using the soil water potential and the leaf water potential gradient. So the water potential gradient between soil and the leaf, and also the hydraulic resistance schemes across the soil plant system. However, This is a system scheme, so it is not representing the explicit plant hydraulic pathway. So, for example, how the water is transported into the root, to the stem, and to the leaf. So we're also adding this plant hydraulics pathway. So idea is straightforward. It's basically implemented by Zeng Zeng. So it's basically applying Darcy's law to calculate the water flux between soil and the root, between the root and the stem, and also between stem and the leaf. At the same time, we're also utilizing the leaf water potential to construct the water stress factor, which also will regulating the stomata conductance, but also regulating the whole process. This I will come back briefly later. And so we used Hutouchun site, which is located in China, to do the validation. And then this is the simulation result. As we can see here, this is water stress factor, and this is the latent heat flux, sensible heat, and the GPP. So the plant hydraulic version does not necessarily improve further the already well simulated latent heat flux and the sensible heat flux. However, for GPP, it does improve its simulation. The black lines are observations, the red lines are plant hydraulic version, and then the blue lines are previous STEMMUS-SCOPE original version. So we can see that for the GPP is improved. At the same time, we can also simulate the water potential in the soil, root, stem, and the leaf. And as we can see here, during the daytime, because of due to the transpiration, the plant water potential are dropping. And then during the nighttime, it recovers and became equilibrium with the soil water potential. So this is also physiologically sounding. Another point I want to mention is that I mentioned briefly, we use also leaf water potential to formulate the water stress factor. And if you recall some slides back, we also use the soil moisture content in the root zone. So the root zone soil moisture content as to formulate the water stress factor. So what are the difference between the two? We can see from here. So the blue lines are original water stress factor formulated using root zone water content. The red lines are water stress factor formulated using leaf water potential. So we can see that using leaf water potential, the water stress factor is much more sensitive. Yeah, so I mean, this is understandable because during drought period, the soil water content is very flat. It's, I mean, around 0.5, 0.7, or even lower. It depends on where and the soil texture. So you don't see much variation. But if you use the water potential, it is a much more sensitive water stress factor. So with the better, let's say the sensitive water stress factor, we can simulate well latent heat flux, sensible heat flux, and the GPP. However, because our model also simulates the sieve, we can see that even with the sensitive water stress factor, it does not necessarily improve the sieve simulation. Yeah, solar-induced fluorescence calculated by the original STEMMUS-SCOPE model and the plant hydraulics model are more or less the same. And it is still overestimating quite a lot. It's about 2 or 3 times overestimation of the sieve. And within the GWAX glass panel, we have SIF-MIP project. So STEMMUS-SCOPE also joined the SIF-MIP project. And most of the LAM models also have this kind of overestimation issues. So this indicate maybe there's kind of a potential process are missing in terms of understanding SIF. And from our point of view, one of the potential reasons for such kind of overestimation could be due to the simplification of photosynthetic process, which actually should encompass the whole chain or the whole process. So including photophysics, photochemistry, and also biochemistry. Yeah, because this part of photophysics determined how much energy from the photons will be utilized for electron transport, and then electron transport rate will provide ATP and ADPH for the biochemistry, the dark reaction part. So we really need to consider the full chain of the photosynthetic processes. But then currently in, for example, STEMMUS-SCOPE, we use this potential electron transport, and then we use the net assimilation to scale it down to get this actual electron transport rate. So this is a kind of a simplification. But then we think, okay, maybe with this full chain of processes considered, we need to update the old, let's say, scope approach. Then therefore, we incorporate this so-called mechanistic light response model into our model, STEMMUS-SCOPE. And this is developed by Professor Liang Honggu from Oak Ridge National Lab. And based on his publication 2019, 2022, and 2023, we incorporated mechanistic light response model into STEMMUS-SCOPE. At the same time, also make it coordinated with our soil plant hydraulic process. And after that, we got improved sieve simulation. So the black lines are observations, the red lines are the model version considering the mechanistic light response model. And then the blue are still the previous version considering the plant hydraulics without the machine learning, without a mechanistic light response model. So, I mean, yeah, this is a much more, let's say, in a better agreement with the observation. So with this improvement, then we can start to investigate mechanistic link between the sieve and leaf water potential. So we plot them together, and this is our three model versions. You have a STEMMUS-SCOPE, you have a plant hydraulic version, you have a mechanistic light response version. So they are all showing the general relationship. Yeah, it's apparent linear relationship, as I mentioned before. Only thing is that compared to the original STEMMUS-SCOPE model, the plant hydraulics one and the MLR one show a much confined, robust linear relationship between sieve and leaf water potential. And then compared to the plant hydraulics, the MLR model show slow, let's say smaller slope. We can also plot the relationship between electron transport rate and leaf water potential. And in general, they show such kind of negative relationship. But then for the MLR model, it shows much more responsive, let's say curve, yeah, compared to plant hydraulics. Another note here is that for the electron transport rate, it also depends on the power. Yeah, so the if it is high power, it is during the noon or it is in the morning, early morning, in the evening. That also will impact the electron transport rate. But in general, you can, I mean, when you plot that, you can see you have kind of a general negative relationship here. At the same time, as I showed before, so we can also simulate the soil plant water potential across the soil plant system in a reasonable, a meaningful way. Okay, so the next, so with all this above understanding, so this is still a forward simulation. Then we are thinking, okay, if there's a sieve data, can we inversely retrieve the ET and the GPP? So we have done that, and then now because the sieve is our model input, because we want to use satellite sieve, so we don't need to simulate the sieve anymore. So therefore, we just skip the radiative transfer model in this modeling framework. But instead, we still need to use the mechanistic light response model. Yeah, because we, as I mentioned in the previous slide, with this full chain consideration of the photosynthetic processes, they can get a better, let's say, understanding of the water energy and the carbon cycles. So therefore, we just coupled the MLR model, the mechanistic light response model without the radiative transfer part, and then we coupled it with a soil model, with the canopy model, and the evapotranspiration module. And then we used two sites in China to do validation, and then scale up to a magnetic flux. And this is what we get. So it shows that, I mean, this is simulated GBP. This is using the STEMMUS MLR, and then this is ET. So I would say we successfully inversely, let's say, estimate the GPP and the ET by mechanistically linking the solar-induced fluorescence with root zone soil moisture content, because this is basically realized. It's a mechanistic link between the sieve and the root zone water content is basically through the coupling of mechanistic light response model with our soil model. On the other hand, we also group the model performance into, for example, different water stress levels or different sieve value range. And one thing you can see here is that, I mean, for example, when the water stress factor is lower than 0.4, meaning it is a very arid and dry region, and then for the sieve value, let's say let's say the sieve value range is smaller than 0.2. It's also subject to the signal to noise ratios. Let's say you have a very low signal to noise ratio here. So for the arid land, when the sieve, let's say satellite signal has a very low signal to noise ratio, then the model underperformed. So this is still a challenge for us to address. The next challenge is linked to the consideration of dynamic vegetation growth and canopy structure. So I will briefly explain, I mean, our motivation. So for the STEMMUS-SCOPE, we need to use LOAI as model input. And then we know, I mean, for the optical LOAI data, you tend to have gaps. And then if there's no LOAI, then you cannot run the STEMMUS-SCOPE. So therefore, we think, okay, maybe we can just incorporate the, although you can do, I mean, hunts and then doing gap feeding, anything, but then we are thinking, okay, maybe we can also utilizing the plant growth model to just simulate LOAI as a prognostic variable. So this is what we did. So we incorporate the waffles, basically the plant growth module, into our STEMMUS-SCOPE model. The idea is straightforward. So with this vegetation model, we can simulate calculate the assimilated net assimilation, and this assimilated carbon will be partitioned into organ, root, stem, and the leaf. And then for the root part of simulation will be coordinated with our STEMMUS model, which is linked to the dynamic root growth and the root water uptake. And for the plant height and late LAI, they are feedback to the vegetation model to, let's say, update the energy balance and also update the net assimilation. And so this is what we did, and we compare, let's say, run the updated model to two sites, maize and the soybean site. So you cover both C4, C3 plants. And compared to the original model, it got some improved prediction, particularly for GBP for soybean. For example, if we look at here, the blue lines are observation, red lines are considering the plant growth, and then the black lines are using original model and using LAI as input, LAI product as input. And then we can see that, I mean, particularly for the beginning of the growing season, the red line, the plant growth model can capture the observation very well. So in general, let's say you get the reasonable reproducing the GBP and the ET. At the same time, because you have the dynamic vegetation growth, you can get also dry mass for leaf, for stem, and also for the grain. Yeah, so this also can be simulated for maize, and also above ground biomass for soybean can be stimulated also very well. On top of that, now we can actually put all the information together to analyze, let's say, the coordination, for example, between leaf water potential, sieve, GPP, but also the LAI growth rate. So, I mean, for different vegetation stages. So, for example, for vegetative stage, we can see that because this is site, this is a US bowl one site, so it's a medic flux site, and this site is irrigated site. So therefore, you can see quite let's say apparent also linear correlation between SIF and GPP. Yeah, so this is what you see. At the same time, we can see that there's also positive correlation between SIF and LOAI growth rate. So with a larger SIF, you can see also larger LOAI growth rate. On the other hand, if we look at the reproductive stage, you can see that, okay, the SIF signal is muted for the LOAI growth because, I mean, at the least reproductive stage, the LOAI is saturated already. So therefore, this is also physically something. The next challenge we face is that, so although in the previous model development, we consider hydraulic, let's say, connections, and also it is coordination with the safe photosynthetic processes, and also now you have a dynamic vegetation growth. But then if we look at the, let's say, the canopy structure, it was a little bit simplified. So which means we consider the homogeneous canopy layers and the homogeneous leaf properties, and which means you can see LOAI at the top of the canopy, but also under the canopy, you can see the LOAI, so, TOD ground. So which is not realistic. I mean, if we take any picture of a tree, so this is a tree in our garden, in our office, we know, I mean, leaves are only concentrating on canopy layer. So how to characterize it? Most of the time you can use LiDAR data to get the canopy structure information, or you can get also JEDI data from, I mean, to characterize the canopy structure. On the other hand, it's also not everywhere available, right? So on the other hand, there's also Lindenmayer, let's say, system, also called L system model, which we can utilize to simulate the canopy structure. And then this is what we did. So this is an example for evergreen broadleaf, and basically utilizing the L system, we produce, let's say, according to the picture, according to let's say the picture we find from Google Earth Engine, or from the site information, and then we can utilizing L system to simulate, I mean, more or less like a similar type of a canopy structure. And then based on that, you can get this property distribution of canopy leaves. And then utilizing this probability function or distribution, we can redistribute the LOAI to concentrate only on canopy layer and remove LOAI from the stem. And as I said, this will also determine the distribution property of sunlight, yeah, and then will improve the simulation of reflectance and transmittance for each layer. So we incorporated this into our model, and then do the compare, I mean, the model without considering the canopy structure. So this is for net radiation, and the top panel for net radiation, the lower part for leaf temperature. And we can see that, I mean, the main difference between the original model and the model considering the canopy structure, yeah, the difference are mainly concentrated in the canopy layer, which is physiologically sounding. And then this certainly will lead to better quantification of productivity and water use efficiency when it is fully coordinated, also with the plant, soil plant hydraulics. Okay, last bit. I think I still have some time. So the last bit is about the emulator. With all these processes considered, so when we're trying to run it for let's say the global scale, actually at the beginning we are thinking to run a 1 kilometer, But then because of the storage is really demanding, the storage is really demanding. So we decided to run for 9 kilometers. But in any case, the idea is that, okay, with all this advanced, let's say, understanding of the processes, maybe we can train a simple emulator for STEMMUS-SCOPE model, and then you can generate a global flux data set, including latent heat, sensible heat, ground heat, but also GPP, NEE, and also the solar-induced fluorescence. And the idea is actually quite straightforward because at the beginning, I show an example in terms of running our STEMMUS-SCOPE model for Plum 2 sites. So it is in total 170 sites. And then utilizing all these 170 site simulation result, we have, let's say, model inputs and model outputs. Yeah. And this model input and output can be utilizing as kind of data, let's say, data pairs for training this emulator model. And after that, we're utilizing Earth observation data, but also ELO5 metadata as input to produce the global, let's say, water energy carbon fluxes, but also SIF. And I'm not sure. Yeah, it is now moving. So, and this is the animation for the hourly variation of latent heat flux and GPP, but also SIF at the red band and also far red band. And then we can see, I mean, yeah, can see the pattern and how they correspond with each other. Which also shows the process understanding, as I mentioned before. And this is also a 20 years data set, so we can utilize it for characterizing, for example, the extreme events and also some hotspots. For this, I will not go into details. Okay, so with the above slides, I hope I convince you, let's say, the solar-induced fluorescence as kind of an Earth observation observable is really kind of a central hub integrating the water energy carbon cycles. And the interpretation of the SIF, I would say, is not only about, it is not a simple, let's say, satellite signal. It's quite a, how to say, aggregated indicator to understand this SIF, because it really requires the full spectrum understanding of the photosynthetic processes, but also the coordination between the photosynthetic processes and the soil plant hydraulics. And because of this, soil plant hydraulics can create a mechanistic link, yeah, between the SIF and the soil plant water potential, as I presented before. And then in order to also get a more realistic SIF simulation, I mean, across the canopy scale, we also need to represent the dynamic vegetation growth and also the canopy structure. And then I think with this enhanced soil plant process understanding, so we didn't we didn't use yet the advanced machine learning approach to build this emulator. Currently, we are also working on some more like a transformer type of approach to build this emulator. But then I think if we have the soil plant processes understanding captured, then I mean, maybe a simple emulator is also sufficient already, as we just did to accelerate the ecosystem understanding at a global scale. Okay, with that, I put some reference I used in my talk here for your later reference. And you are welcome to have a look at the STEMMUS-SCOPE model. It is open source. And I will stop here. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Yijian. That was a really nice presentation, and yeah, very nice to see the impact of all the updates to STEMMUS-SCOPE on the kind of improvements to modeling SIF. It's really cool to see. I think we've got a few questions. Marvin has their hand raised. I think I can allow you to talk, Marvin, if you want to ask a question. If not, I
Oh,
can go through
mm,
some of the other questions while Marvin unmutes themselves. So Mohammed, maybe I can see if you want to ask your question as well. If you do, otherwise I can read it out. That's no problem. If not, so Mohammed's question was: Is there any optimal value for soil moisture length for proper hydraulic functioning of the plant? I
Okay. Yes. Soil moisture length. I guess it's optimal soil moisture content, right? In
Yes.
that sense, for proper hydraulic function of the plant. Yeah, that's good. Very good question. There are several actually papers out in Nature and the Science. I think from ETH, Angelia Caminati's group, particularly focus on this topic. Uh, um, I would say yes, because mainly for example, I mean, we know there's permanent welding point, there's a field capacity, and then the plant will operate very optimally between this range, right? So it's a plant available water range, and as long as everything is let's say the atmospheric demanding, or let's say like VPD is also not very high, then the plant is supposed, I mean, the stomata conductance is not closed, then you are supposed to operate very well. So I think that's yeah. But if you want, you can see some latest publication on this perspective. But from our model, this can be simulated very well. Yeah.
Yeah, no, great. Yeah, thanks, Yijian. So
Yeah.
another attendee who's anonymous in the questions asked, does plant hydraulics in your STEMMUS scope include plant water storage? How important is plant water storage for the mechanisms, and would it affect the model performance?
Yeah. Thanks for this question. This is actually one of the topic Zheng Sheng is trying to add in and not yet realized, but we do let's acknowledge the importance of a plant water storage for some species and under different environments. But for some species we are working on now in the Netherlands, these things. I mean, according to our measurements in the food forest, this is things not let's say dominant in a sense. Yeah.
Great. Yeah. So Matthias asks, well, Matthias, I've allowed you to speak if you do want to, but otherwise I can read out your question.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hi.
thanks, Jen. Yeah,
Yes.
great work. Really
Thank
cool.
you. Yes. Yeah.
So, my question is in the MLR model,
Yes.
there's actually no water potential or something. There's no water in there actually. So what's the mechanism? How is leaf water potential actually acting on something in the MLR model?
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for asking this question. And this is indeed, let's say, the MLR model is mainly focused on, for example, how the cytochrome B6F. Yeah, so I mean, this will go a little bit deeper. So Matthias' question is always like this. So for the system, they are embedded on let's say thylakoid membrane, and then within the thylakoid membrane, of course, you have photosystem 2, photosystem 1, and then in between you have this cytochrome B6F, and then in the MLR model. Let's say the electron transport rate is regulated by the redox state of this chain, and most of the time is the cytochrome B6F is throttling this electron transport. And then within this MLR model, there is several parameters indicating saying, okay, if the thylakoid is swelling or shrinking, because swelling meaning you can have, let's say, wider band for electron to transport. And then if it is shrinking, then the electron transport will be regulated down or down-regulated. And then there's a parameter links to this, and in the MLR model is purely driven by light. Yeah. And then in our model, we think it's not only driven by light, but also driven by leaf water potential. So therefore, we construct this leaf water potential to regulate that shrinking and the swelling part. And we also trying to look for, let's say, in situ measurement, let's say, proof. And this can be done, for example, by simultaneously monitoring leaf water potential, but also the proton motif, so PMF, which is reflection of this redox state of thylakoid.
Okay, but you basically really coded it inside. So
We
it's yeah. So it's not
yeah,
in the original GU model or in
not
the
in the original model.
Claire or whatever. So you really
No.
coded it inside. Okay.
Yeah, we coded it. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks.
Great, thanks, Matthias. So Anna has a question as well. Did you want to ask that yourself, or otherwise I can read out?
Anna is connecting to audio.
Okay, no, maybe she's saying asking me to ask it. So yes, she says great talk, and your focus is very much on SIF as the Earth observation observable. But what about land surface temperature and leaf water content? Are those
Yes,
any considerations for yourself?
yeah. Thanks a lot, Anna, for the question. Not sure if you are still here. Um, I think yes, huh? It's just not appearing on my screen. But okay, good question. Actually, the land surface temperature is also how to say, we also trying to improve it through several perspective. So first of all is the surface resistant part, and this we already adjusted, because in the original, let's say, scope model, this surface boundary resistance scheme use a kind of big leaf approach, so which is not giving enough details, let's say, to simulate land surface temperature well. So we already fixed that part actually. And another thing is, as I show you briefly in the canopy structure slide, actually with the improved canopy structure, you can also get improved simulation of land surface temperature, because now the leaf temperature, the radiation is different. It was concentrated on the canopy part. Yeah. And this is also what we see, the big difference concentrated on canopy layer.
Yeah, very nice. So then, Senlin.
Maybe sorry, if then
No, no, of course.
one more question I forgot to answer to Anna is the leaf water content. Leaf water content is linked to leaf water potential. So through this pressure volume curve, you can get the leaf water content. So if you have a leaf water potential, you basically can also get the leaf water content. So this is like a water retention curve in soil. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, no, thanks, Yijian. So Senlin has a question as well. Did you want to ask that yourself, or do you want me to read it out for you? No problem either way. So maybe I can ask it then. So it says, thank you for your nice presentation. For SIF data assimilation in land surface models, would you recommend implementing the mechanistic SIF scheme into a land surface model for direct assimilation, or developing OBS-based GPP SIF relationship to convert SIF to GPP for indirect assimilation? So I guess, yeah, would you rather put it into the model, or would you do it at the observation operator level, I
Yeah.
guess?
Yeah. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Chen, for your question. I would say implementing the mechanistic SIF scheme into land surface model will be much better, because currently, I mean, when you are using the GPP SIF relationship, is I mean, like I showed, it depends on the process, depends on I mean, the time scale. You can see some linear relationship between GPP and the SIF, but you can also get quite a nonlinear GPP SIF when there's a water stress factor. Yeah, so you can devise some let's say, well, kind of observed relationship, but then it's not directly linking mechanistically received signal into the soil plant processes. So I would really recommend to do this mechanistic SIP scheme. So we are using, let's say, Goose model, MLR model, but there's also another model I should mention here is by Janssen. So it's a JB model. So Janssen and Boberi. So Jennifer Janssen and Boberi, they also had another, let's say, light response model for calculating the actual electron transport rate. So that is another mechanistic link between SIF and let's say land surface model. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, thanks so much, Ian. Yeah, but maybe from my side as well, I was wondering what was the method that you were using for the emulator? What was the machine learning method you used to train your
Oh yeah,
emulator? And
we use
then,
the yeah we use the
oh
very
yeah,
simple one. It's a random forest.
okay, no, very good. Yeah, I mean they work well, right? They do the job.
Yeah,
And
they
then
do. Yeah.
with the emulator, did you have any plans to once you obviously you've got a very nice model there, physical model, which you can learn a good fast emulator from. But did you have any further plans to then? Because I mean, you could think of something potentially, I suppose, like fine tuning that emulator then towards observations or something like that. Was that anything that you were considering, or are you kind of more using this just as a nice way to speed up the
Yeah.
runs and produce these data sets?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Ivan, for the provoking question. Yes, let's say we have. So currently, well, one part of the work is currently undergoing is a postdoc who are trying to use the transformer, yeah, to rebuild the emulator. So this is one part of it. But then the second direction, we are trying to use this so-called differentiable machine learning or differentiable modeling. So we are trying to, for example, for the MLR model, there are some parameters that has to be fit, and also it depends on observation data. Currently, there is data collected by Liang Honggu, which is called Leaf Web, but it's only like globally, it's only 2,300 or something like that. So it's certainly very limited the data availability there. And then we are thinking maybe we can also using differentiable modeling type of approach. So it's a hybrid differentiable machine learning to learn some parameter for MLR parameters. Yeah, so those
Yeah, I think
parameters are difficult to get. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, no, I think it's a very nice option. I mean, if these models now, I mean, we can code them up in some of these languages which are differentiable, and then you can kind of train them to learn the parameters that we are uncertain of with the data that is available. I think it's a very nice, yeah,
yeah,
very nice idea.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, great. So I think that's all the questions. So yeah, again, I'll say yeah. Oh, have we got? Oh no, just Suhao saying thanks. But yeah, so just to say yeah, thanks again, Yuzhan, for the very nice presentation, and thanks for all the questions from everyone participating. And I guess yeah, we'll see you next time.
Yeah. Oh, thank you very much. Yeah. Thank you all. Let's see you next time. See you.
Cheers.
Bye.